So let's talk about conditioning. As a gentleman pointed out just now, we went to a certain extent and we were rather driven off our course. Like that gentleman asked, I have listened to you for a number of years and there is nothing. I must tell you a lovely story about this. A pupil goes to a teacher and says, teach me what is truth. And he says, all right, stay with me. We'll have a conversation about the universe, about the beauty of land, and so on, so on. We'll talk, and perhaps you will see truth. So the teacher talks to him every day and goes into various things. At the end of 15 years, he says, Master, I've lived with you for 15 years, watched you, listened to you, see you how you act, do this and do that, but I haven't got truth. So I'm leaving you. There's a man a few miles further away where I'm going to learn from him the truth. So the teacher says, certainly. So he's away for 5 years and comes back to the original teacher and he says, I've found it. And he says, really? Have you found it? Yes. He said, there is that river. They were standing by the banks of the river. There is that river. And I can walk across it. I've found it. He said, the teacher then says, you have taken 5 years to learn this and more? Yes. And the teacher says, there's a boat, if you pay a cent or you'll cross it. Right? Got it? Most of us are like that. We pay enormous efforts to do things where it's so simple. Now let's start about conditioning. We explained very carefully what is the meaning of that word. Physically we are conditioned. You are a man, you are a woman, I'm a man. You are short, I'm tall, or brown, white, pink, or whatever it is. So, that's part of our condition. Normal, healthy, natural. We are talking about psychological conditioning, which is the mind being conditioned. The mind being our feelings, our sensations, our emotions, imagination, and the intellectual concepts, the fears, the anxieties, the guilt, the hurts, and so on, is all that part of our conditioning, psychological, which may be called consciousness, right? We are using ordinary words. If you want me to use different sets of words, I can use them. But let's stick to the ordinary original meaning, which is the mind, which includes thought, feeling, imagination, romanticism, and the sensations. So it is limited. That is limited by the culture in which it lives. Right, sir? The country in which it lives, the tradition, the superstition, the religion, the economic condition, the social structure. Do this, don't do that, this is right, this is wrong, from the family extent. Right. All that is they are the contents of our mind, contents of our consciousness. Right? That's clear and simple. So, a mind that is cultured, that is brought up in a limited sense, which is the conditioning. When we use the condition, it implies limited, conditioned. It's not extensive, it's not universal, global. It's limited, conditioned. Right? Now, when one's mind is so conditioned and your mind is so conditioned, there is division. Obviously, I am an Arab and you are a Jew. Both Semitic races, but divided by language, by race, by prejudice, by beliefs, by dogmas. I believe in the Prophet, you believe in something else. And I'm willing to fight you, to kill you, and you believe, right? That is part of our conditioning. Now we are asking, please just listen, don't agree or disagree, just find out. I am asking you, or you are asking yourself, do you know you are conditioned? Or somebody is telling you you are conditioned. You see the difference? I wonder if you see the difference. Right? Do you see the difference? Is it your own discovery, or somebody has discovered this and tells you about it, and with which you agree? See the difference? Long before the World War, the Second World War, a very famous journalist came to see me, see the speaker, and we were talking about various things that are happening in the world. He was a very, very intelligent man, very well known, and I brought this question of conditioning. He said, only the Indian mind can think that. You understand? See we were talking about conditioning of man, whether he could, etc., etc. So immediately, he never applied it to himself, but it is the capacity of the Indian mind that goes into such subtleties. So I'm asking you whether you are being told about it and therefore you realize it, or you realize for yourself that you are conditioned. If you are told about it and agree, that has one effect, a superficial effect, a devious effect, a doubtful effect, a skeptical effect. Say, yes, you say so, but so-and-so doesn't say so. I prefer the other. Or, if you yourself realize it, it is so, it is so. Doesn't matter, 1,000,000 people can say nonsense. It is so. It's like being hungry. Others can say, sorry, you're not hungry, old boy, you're pretending. But if I'm hungry, I know it. You see the difference? So let's be very clear that we see the difference. Now, if you see the difference, that you yourself, by looking at the world, what's happening in the world, the culture, the tradition, the superstition, the religious nonsense, and so on, so on, so on, and you realize, I am that. Right? Wait, let me finish that. Un momento, let me finish what we're talking about conditioning, and then you can then argue or question whatever you wish. So, let us be very clear that the condition is not imposed on you, persuaded by another, logically, illogically, or rationally, or merely he wants to tell you a story. That's one thing. The other is for oneself to see the danger of being conditioned. Understand? Do you see that? For yourself. Yes, sir. All right. That's what this gentleman says. Yes, you don't have to tell me. I know I'm conditioned.
Yes, but you say, but do you see this condition?
Yes, you.
The see implies someone who sees it.
Yes, we went into that yesterday.
So how can you be the condition and see it at the same time?
How can you know that you are conditioned if I am conditioned? You follow the question? He says, how do you know or aware that you are conditioned? If you don't observe it as something separate from you, then you can say, I know. But if you yourself are conditioned, how can you say I'm conditioned? You see the problem? No? No, I'll have to explain it. Everything has got to be explained. Huh? You see the difficulty? If I say to myself, if I see that the entity that is speaking is conditioned, how do I know that I'm conditioned? It's only when I look at it as something outside of myself, then I can say I'm conditioned. Am I explaining your question properly, sir? Yes. You understand? This is not being subtle, this is being simple about it. How do you know that you are in pain? Somebody tell you that you are in pain? Or is pain, wait a minute, separate from you who says, I'm in pain? You follow what I'm saying? Somebody puts a pin in your leg and you have pain. Pain is through nerves and so on to the brain, and you say, there's pain. You know pain for itself, right? Caused by a physical accident or pain of grief and so on and so on. So, You know when you are pain. So can't you know equally that this conditioning is there? Either you approach it from outer, you follow? The results of conditioning from the outer, wars, division, conflict. You're a Muslim, I'm a Hindu, with Catholic, Protestant. From the outer, move to the inner and say, see, logically, this sense of separation, which is the conditioning, creates pain, conflict. So, then you inquire what are the reasons of this conflict. Then you discover it is because human beings are conditioned. Catholic, Protestant, Hindu, Muslim, Arab, Jew, wife, all the rest of it. So you become there is an awareness that conditioning itself like pain is there. Right? Have I made myself clear? So let's proceed from there. Now, the next question is, that is, nobody is telling you, you know it, as you know pain. Then why not leave it alone? Why not leave this conditioning alone? There are some good conditioning, as the gentleman said yesterday. I'll keep those good conditionings and reject those unpleasant conditionings. Right? Please see this. I will reject the unpleasant conditionings and keep the pleasant one. Right? Right? That's what he said. Now, who chooses? You understand my question? Say, this I will keep, this I won't keep. Again, the entity was conditioned. So, choice is conditioning. I wonder if you see that. There we go. See? Do you see that, sir? Any form of psychological choice is conditioning. I will keep these and I will reject those, which is based on choice. The choice is the result either of pleasure, gratifying, or is painful, so I'll throw those away. We are talking of the total conditioning, not just the pleasant ones and the unpleasant ones. From that, next question is it possible, having listened to all this very carefully, understood everything in detail that we have described, then you ask, is it possible to be unconditioned? Both at the superficial level of consciousness and also at the deeper layers, at the greater depth of consciousness. That is totally. You ask this question not out of idle curiosity, but you see what conditioning has done in the world. Right? $400 billion every year spent on armament. God, do you realize what it means? I don't think you do. That is the condition. Each protecting himself. Throw it away. Have you? Yes. She says, just throw it away. Is it so easy? As you throw away a dirty handkerchief or a dirty piece of paper, just throw it away. Is it so easy? I wish it were. Do you mean to say a man who has been a Catholic or a woman who has been carefully baptized, brought up in Catholicism, practicing Catholicism, soaked in it, that's his conditioning. Say, just drop it overboard. Will you do it? So, please.
It seems to go beyond that perception. I can perceive the conditioning, perceive the reality of it, yet it recurs.
No, I'm going to that. It recurs because one doesn't see the complete danger of it. It never recurs to throw yourself down a precipice, does it? Huh? Once you see the danger of a precipice, it's finished. Right? You never say, well, I'll try again. So, the question is, why don't you see totally, completely the danger of conditioning? The entirety, not just little bits and little bits. Because you are still in that position, keeping some which are pleasant and putting away the others which are not. So you're playing a game with yourself. Right? So can you see for yourself? And the seeing of it is the essence of intelligence. That conditioning is a tremendous danger to man. You have very good examples. Human beings are spending $400 billion every year on armaments. And you can say, what can I do about it? Right? But you elect the politicians. If you felt the tremendous danger of conditioning, you act. You don't argue. Right, sir? Now, the question is, do you see the danger of it? If you don't, why? Look, the danger of ambition, right? The politician trying to govern the people politely, but tremendously ambitious to come on top of the heap. There was a prime minister who spoke at a union, saying, a union of students, said, don't be ambitious. You understand? The joke of it. Because he's right on top and says, don't be ambitious. But we don't see the danger of ambition, which is to have power, which is to have position. Right? If you saw the immense danger of it, it's finished. You don't argue, you don't say, well, what happens after if you have no ambition? You have no ambition because you are intelligent. Right, sir? So, we are asking, why don't you see the immense danger of being held within a small, narrow space, which is our conditioning? Why don't you? Does it? You must have an accident, event, disastrous event. Then you say, by Jove, I'll give it up. That means you are waiting for an external event to take place and shake you, which means give you a great deal of pain and sorrow, and you say, yes, I understand it now. Which means you are not intelligent. You are waiting for an incident to make you intelligent. But no event can make you intelligent. Got it? You understand this? So, you see, I'll go into a little further. One realizes, if you are serious, I hope you're all serious till now, one realizes that one is conditioned. And one realizes the danger of it, logically. Then you say to yourself, how am I to give it up? How am I to break down the narrow walls which I have created, which civil culture has created, and so on, so on. How am I to break, how is the mind to break down this? Right? I don't know, so I come to you. I say, please, how am I to break this? Listen carefully. And you begin assuming that you're a great man or the guru or this or that. He says, I'll tell you what to do. That is, right? Do this, do this, do this, do this, and you will break it. Which means again, I'm depending on the external person to tell me what to do. Right? So I realized the stupidity of going to another to help me to break down the walls which I have built around myself. Right? So what am I to do? Are you in that position? What am I to do to break down this wall which I have built, society has built, and society is my relationship with another? So I have built it. It is my desire, my ambition, my sensations, my will that has built this enormous, limited prison. Now what am I to do? I realize whatever positive act I do about it is still the action of a mind, a thought, which is limited. Whatever I do. You understand? I hope you're following this. Is it time or getting tired? No, it's not. I've got another 10 minutes. So I realize it's no good depending on another. The other may be guru, the priest, or the idea that you are surrender yourself to all that nonsense. So, what am I to do? My conditioning is, please listen to it, my conditioning is to do something about it. I have been to the priest, I have been to the guru, I have been to the professor, to the analyst, which is again doing something about it. Or I say, well, no, it's too troublesome, I'll leave it alone. What the heck does it matter? Right? But if I don't, my conditioning is to act. I'm positive in that action. At least I feel I'm doing something about it, which is part of my conditioning, my culture, my tradition, my education. And here is a man comes along and tells me, don't do anything. You understand? Don't do a thing. Because he has told, I have realized that positive action is totally inaction. Whereas, to be with it and not act. I know I'm conditioned, I won't act, but I will watch. You understand? Watching, alert, aware. And I see every response is from that conditioning. I observe, I don't do anything. So, when there is non-positive action, you don't give energy to the conditioning. That dies by itself when you don't give it a push or suppress it or run away from it. But when you are aware of it and don't act, because that's the most, you realize non-action is intelligence. Action is unintelligent. You follow this? So if you do this, I mean, if this takes place, it's all over. That's why we talked about the other day, positive and action, which is what is happening in the world. Russia says, I must build an armament stronger than America. You follow? And every country is being supplied by them, and they are fighting, which is to take positive action to keep power, position. I am bigger than you. Right? When I said, see all this, the stupidity of man, right? See it and leave it alone. Then the leaving it alone is intelligence which will act, which is unconditioned. That's enough.